At my daughter's wedding, she told me, "You're not my real dad." What happened next shocked everyone. I stood frozen at the entrance of the wedding hall, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the orchestra playing a cheerful melody inside. In my trembling hands, I held a carefully wrapped gift, a silver locket I had saved up for months to buy. Inside it, I had placed a tiny picture of Emily as a child, smiling on her first day of school, and another picture of me, the father who had raised her alone for 25 years. I thought this would be the happiest day of my life. I had imagined her walking down the aisle, her hand in mine, thanking me for everything I sacrificed after her mother's death. I had imagined tears of joy, hugs, whispers of, "Dad, I love you." But what happened instead cut deeper than any wound I had ever endured. As I stepped inside, people turned to look at me. Some smiled, some whispered. Then my daughter Emily, my pride, my everything, spotted me. For a second, our eyes met. I smiled. My lips even formed the words, "You look beautiful." But then her face hardened. She whispered something to her groom, who frowned and nodded. And then, in a voice that silenced the entire hall, she shouted, "You're not my real dad. You don't belong here. Leave!" The laughter from a group of bridesmaids stung like knives. Someone gasped. People were lifted. People started recording. The very walls of the hall seemed to close in on me. I stood there, shaking, unable to breathe. "Emily," I whispered, but my voice broke. She turned away, clutching her groom's arm. "I told you not to come. Why can't you just accept it?" The guests stared, some with pity, some with judgment. And in that moment, all I could hear was the echo of her words. "You're not my real dad." What she didn't know, what no one in that hall knew, was that I had kept a secret locked away for over 2 decades, a secret so powerful it could shatter her perfect wedding in seconds. But at that moment, I didn't reveal it. Not yet. Instead, I felt something inside me shift. The years of sacrifice, the nights of hunger so she could eat, the money I worked double shifts to save for her education, the countless dreams I gave up, all of it burned inside me like wildfire. And I realized, if this was how my daughter repaid me, maybe it was finally time to tell the truth. A truth she would never forget. I walked out of that wedding hall with the weight of 1,000 knives in my chest. The sound of laughter, whispers, and that one sentence, "You're not my real dad," kept replaying in my head, like a cruel song stuck on repeat. The cold December air bit my skin, but the sting in my heart was far worse. I stood by my old pickup truck, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For a long moment, I didn't move. I didn't breathe. All I could think was, where did I go wrong? Emily was only 5 when her mother, Claire, died in that terrible accident. I still remember that night, the flashing red lights, the police officer removing his hat before speaking, my little girl sleeping in the back seat of my car, unaware that her whole world had just shattered. From that night onward, I promised myself I would never let her feel alone. I will be both father and mother. I will protect her at any cost. And I did. When money was tight, I skipped meals so she wouldn't have to. When she cried for toys I couldn't afford, I learned to carve little wooden animals just to see her smile. When she needed braces, I worked overnight shifts at the mill until my hands bled. I was there for every scraped knee, every parent-teacher meeting, every broken heart. But now,
She had erased all of that with a single sentence. "You're not my real dad." The words echoed. But here's the thing. She wasn't entirely wrong, because Emily's life began with a secret I had carried alone for more than 25 years. You see, Emily was born before Claire and I were married, and though I raised her as my own from the very first moment I held her tiny body in my arms, I had always known there was a chance she wasn't biologically mine. Claire and I had never spoken about it directly, but I remembered the night she stayed out too late before we got married, the hushed phone calls, the name I once overheard, David. I buried those suspicions deep down because when Claire handed me that baby, crying and fragile, I felt something stronger than blood, love. So I chose to be Emily's father in every way that mattered. But what gnawed at me now was this. Who told her? She had never questioned me growing up, never once said I wasn't her dad. Did her new husband plant the idea? Did Claire, before she died, tell her something I never knew? Or was David, that shadow from the past, still out there whispering lies into her ear? I started the truck, but I didn't drive home. Instead, I sat there in the dark parking lot, staring at the glittering wedding hall lights, and something inside me hardened. If Emily thought I wasn't her father, if she dared to humiliate me in front of everyone, then maybe it was time she learned the truth about where she came from and about the man who really abandoned her. But there was more, because tucked away in my desk drawer at home was something Claire had left me before she died. A sealed envelope, yellowed with age, with one single instruction. Give this to Emily when the time is right. For 20 years I hadn't touched it. For 20 years I told myself the right time would come. But after tonight, after what she did, I realized that time was now. I gripped the steering wheel and whispered into the empty truck, "You want to know the truth, Emily? You're about to get it. And when you do, you'll regret every word you said tonight." The cold wind howled outside, rattling the windows. My heart raced, not just with anger, but with something else, fear. Because I didn't know exactly what was inside that envelope, and part of me was terrified that once Emily read it, nothing between us would ever be the same again. Still, there was no turning back.
The drive home felt endless. The roads were dark, slick with rain, but I hardly noticed. My hands gripped the steering wheel as if letting go would mean falling into the abyss of my thoughts. Every stoplight blurred into one long tunnel of memories. Emily's first steps, her laughter as she ran through the sprinklers in the backyard, her graduation gown swishing in the wind. All of it felt fragile now, like glass shattering in slow motion. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the December storm had grown worse. Thunder rolled in the distance, lightning flashed across the sky, and the old porch light flickered as if warning me that tonight would not be ordinary. I pushed open the front door, the familiar creak echoing through the empty house. Once, this place was filled with Emily's drawings taped to the fridge, Claire's perfume lingering in the hallways, and the sound of birthday candles being blown out. Now it was just me and the ghosts of a family I thought I had. I didn't bother turning on the TV or the lights. I knew where I was going, straight to the study. The drawer was locked, always had been. I unlocked it with the small brass key I carried on my keychain for over 2 decades. My hands trembled as I pulled the drawer open. And there it was, the envelope. Yellowed with age, the edges curled, Claire's handwriting still neat and deliberate across the front. For Emily, when the time is right. I sat down heavily in the leather chair, staring at it. My heart thudded. For years I had wondered what it said. A confession? A goodbye? A truth I wasn't ready to face?
I traced the writing with my finger. "Claire," I whispered, "if you were here, you'd know what to do. But it's just me now, and she's turned her back on me. So, this is it." I tore the seal. Inside was a folded letter and a smaller envelope with Emily's name written in bolder ink. My throat tightened as I unfolded the first letter. Claire's words spilled out, each one carrying the weight of a ghost. "Rick, if you're reading this, it means the day has come when Emily needs the truth. I should have told her myself, but I was too much of a coward. You gave her love when no one else did. You gave her a father. But she deserves to know that the man who gave her life is not the man who raised her."
His name is David Carter. You remember him. I made mistakes before you and I were married, and Emily was the result of one of those mistakes. David never wanted to be a father. He walked away before she was even born. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who built her world. But Rick, there's something else you need to know. David's family, they are not who they seem. There were debts, dangerous connections. I never told you because I wanted to protect you both. If Emily ever finds David, she needs to be careful. Please, if you ever give her this letter, make sure you're there to guide her. Forgive me. Claire. My eyes blurred as I finished the letter. My hand trembled, the paper shaking between my fingers. I sat there, staring at Claire's words, and the silence of the room seemed deafening. So it was true. I wasn't Emily's biological father. But more importantly, Claire's warning meant Emily's real father, David, was still out there, and from the sound of it, he was the kind of man who could destroy her life. I clenched my jaw. Emily thought I was nothing, that I didn't belong at her wedding, but she had no idea how much danger she might be walking into if she ever went looking for the man she thought she wanted. I looked down at the second envelope, the one with Emily's name written in bold letters. My chest tightened. Should I open it, or should I give it to her directly? My hand hovered, torn between protecting her and giving her the truth she thought she wanted. Before I could decide, my phone buzzed violently on the desk. I flinched. The screen lit up with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A low male voice crackled through the line. "You don't know me, but I know you and I know Emily. Tell her to stop digging or she'll regret it." The line went dead. I froze, the letter still in my hand. My heart pounded. Who was that? How did they know? And then it hit me. Emily wasn't just humiliating me out of spite at the wedding. Someone had gotten to her. Someone had poisoned her against me. And I had a terrifying suspicion who it might be. David.
I walked out of that wedding hall with the weight of 1,000 knives in my chest. The sound of laughter, whispers, and that one sentence, "You're not my real dad," kept replaying in my head, like a cruel song stuck on repeat. The cold December air bit my skin, but the sting in my heart was far worse. I stood by my old pickup truck, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For a long moment I didn't move. I didn't breathe. All I could think was, where did I go wrong? Emily was only 5 when her mother, Claire, died in that terrible accident. I still remember that night, the flashing red lights, the police officer removing his hat before speaking, my little girl sleeping in the back seat of my car, unaware that her whole world had just shattered. From that night onward, I promised myself I would never let her feel alone. I will be both father and mother. I will protect her at any cost. And I did. When money was tight, I skipped meals so she wouldn't have to. When she cried for toys I couldn't afford, I learned to carve little wooden animals just to see her smile. When she needed braces, I worked overnight shifts at the mill until my hands bled. I was there for every scraped knee, every parent-teacher meeting, every broken heart. But now, she had erased all of that with a single sentence. "You're not my real dad." The words echoed. But here's the thing. She wasn't entirely wrong, because Emily's life began with a secret I had carried alone for more than 25 years. You see, Emily was born before Claire and I were married, and though I raised her as my own from the very first moment I held her tiny body in my arms, I had always known there was a chance she wasn't biologically mine. Claire and I had never spoken about it directly, but I remembered the night she stayed out too late before we got married, the hushed phone calls, the name I once overheard, David. I buried those suspicions deep down because when Claire handed me that baby, crying and fragile, I felt something stronger than blood, love. So I chose to be Emily's father in every way that mattered. But what gnawed at me now was this. Who told her? She had never questioned me growing up, never once said I wasn't her dad. Did her new husband plant the idea? Did Claire, before she died, tell her something I never knew? Or was David, that shadow from the past, still out there whispering lies into her ear? I started the truck, but I didn't drive home. Instead, I sat there in the dark parking lot, staring at the glittering wedding hall lights, and something inside me hardened. If Emily thought I wasn't her father, if she dared to humiliate me in front of everyone, then maybe it was time she learned the truth about where she came from and about the man who really abandoned her. But there was more, because tucked away in my desk drawer at home was something Claire had left me before she died. A sealed envelope, yellowed with age, with one single instruction. Give this to Emily when the time is right. For 20 years I hadn't touched it. For 20 years I told myself the right time would come. But after tonight, after what she did, I realized that time was now. I gripped the steering wheel and whispered into the empty truck, "You want to know the truth, Emily? You're about to get it. And when you do, you'll regret every word you said tonight." The cold wind howled outside, rattling the windows. My heart raced, not just with anger, but with something else, fear. Because I didn't know exactly what was inside that envelope. And part of me was terrified that once Emily read it, nothing between us would ever be the same again. Still, there was no turning back.
Emily, listen to me. My voice shook with urgency. Your mother didn't tell you because she wanted to protect you. David isn't the man you think he is. He abandoned you before you were born. He was dangerous. Claire knew that. She begged me to keep you safe. But Emily shook her head. You're just jealous. Jealous that Harold is giving me the truth. Jealous that he's everything you never were. I slammed my hand on the table, unable to contain the anger boiling in my chest. Everything I never was? Emily, I was there. I raised you when no one else would. I worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. I held you when you cried. I taught you how to ride your bike. I sat through every school recital. David Carter didn't do that. I did. Her face hardened. Maybe, but that doesn't change the fact that you lied. The silence that followed was suffocating. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Emily, please, read your mother's letter. Don't take my word for it. Take hers. She wanted you to know the truth, but she also wanted you to know why. Emily's eyes glistened, but she quickly blinked it away. Her pride, her anger, it was like armor she refused to take off. And then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. A small smile tugged at her lips. It's Harold. He's waiting for me. We're having dinner with David tonight. My blood ran cold. What? Emily looked me dead in the eye. Yes, my real father. Harold arranged it, and you're not invited. She stood, grabbing her coat. Take your letter, burn it, do whatever you want. I don't care anymore. I stood too, panic surging through me.
Emily, listen to me. You don't know what you're walking into. David is not who you think." But she was already at the door. She turned back one last time, her expression a mix of defiance and cruelty. "You're not my real dad, Rick. Stop pretending you are." And then she was gone. I stood there, the echo of her words pounding in my ears. My hands shook as I picked up Claire's letter again. My wife had begged me to protect Emily from David, and now, thanks to Harold, she was walking straight into his arms. I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't stop this, Emily's wedding would be the least of her worries.
The restaurant was one of those high-end places downtown, where the waiters wore suits sharper than most businessmen, and the chandeliers dripped crystal like frozen rain. Every table was set with silverware that gleamed under the golden light, and the air smelled faintly of truffle oil and money. Emily stepped inside with Harold's arm around her waist. Her face was a mix of nervousness and excitement. Tonight she was about to meet the man she had been told was her real father, the one her mother had kept secret, the one Harold had painted as her true family. But she had no idea of the danger lurking beneath the polished surface of that dining room. At the corner table, a man in his late 50s rose to his feet. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive suit that looked tailored to perfection. His hair was slicked back, peppered with gray, his eyes sharp and calculating. He looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom, not a family photo album. "Emily," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. "My daughter." Emily froze, her breath catching in her throat. The word daughter rolled off his tongue with practiced ease, but it felt foreign to her ears. Harold squeezed her hand encouragingly. "Go on, hug him." David opened his arms and Emily hesitantly stepped forward. His embrace was firm, almost possessive, and for a moment Emily felt both comforted and trapped. "You look just like your mother," David said, pulling back to study her face. "So beautiful, so strong." Emily blushed, unsure of what to say. Harold smiled proudly, as if he had orchestrated a miracle. They sat down, menus laid before them, but no one bothered to look. David waved the waiter away, his full attention fixed on Emily. "I can't tell you how long I've waited for this moment. All these years I've been denied the chance to know you. Your mother, she kept you from me. And Rick, well, he raised you, but he's not your blood, not like I am." Emily swallowed. His words were exactly what Harold had told her, but hearing them from David himself was overwhelming. "I don't understand. Why didn't you ever try to find me?" David's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before returning, polished and perfect. "I did, sweetheart, but Claire, she made sure I couldn't. She wanted Rick to play the hero, to raise you as if he were his own. She wanted me gone." Emily's heart twisted. "So everything he told me was a lie?" David leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Of course. He lied because he didn't want you to know the truth. He wanted to keep you as his possession. But you're mine, Emily, my blood, my family, and now we can finally be together."
The silence inside the restaurant was deafening. Forks lay abandoned on plates, conversations had died mid-sentence, and all eyes were on the corner table where Rick, David, Emily, and Harold now sat frozen in a triangle of tension. Emily's pulse thudded in her ears. She could feel the weight of every stare in the room, but the only thing that mattered was the clash of voices before her. David leaned back casually in his chair, though his eyes burned with fury. "You've got a lot of nerve, Kensington, barging in here and poisoning her mind." Rick slammed the letter down on the table. "Poisoning her mind? This?" he jabbed his finger at the envelope, is Claire's last words. She begged me to protect Emily from you, David. She knew exactly the kind of man you are. Emily's eyes darted between them. Stop, please. I don't know who to believe anymore. David leaned forward, his voice dropping low, silky but sharp like a dagger wrapped in velvet. Emily, don't let him trick you. That letter, anyone could have written that. He's desperate, trying to cling to you because he knows the truth. He's nothing. He was just a placeholder. I'm your father. I'm your blood. And your future lies with me. Rick's fists tightened. Blood doesn't make a father. Raising her, loving her, protecting her, that's what makes a father. Where were you when she was born, David? Where were you on her birthdays, her graduations? You weren't there because you didn't care. You never did. Emily's throat tightened. Both men's words stabbed into her chest like glass shards. She wanted to run, to scream, to make time stop. And then Harold spoke, breaking the stalemate. Gentlemen, he said smoothly, lifting his glass like a man watching a chess match. Maybe we should stop pretending this is about family. This is about money. Emily's head whipped toward him. What? Harold smirked. David, don't play coy. You didn't come back into Emily's life because of love. You came back because you need her to unlock that trust fund. Without her, you can't touch a dime. Isn't that right? For the first time, David's mask cracked. His jaw clenched, and he shot Harold a look of pure venom. Rick seized the moment. What trust fund? Emily stared, stunned. What is he talking about? Harold leaned closer to her, lowering his voice so only their table could hear. Your grandfather set up a fortune in your name, Emily, but the catch was simple. You could access it only with a parent's signature. Rick could never use it because legally he wasn't your father. But David? He's been waiting for you to turn 18 so he could swoop in and use you as the key to unlock it. Emily's chest constricted. Is this true? She demanded, turning to David. David's silence was answer enough. The air shattered. You used me, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Everything you said, everything you promised, it was all for money. David reached out, panic flashing across his face. No, Emily, listen to me. But she yanked her hand back. Don't touch me. The entire restaurant was watching now, murmurs rippling like waves. Rick stood, his voice booming. I told you, Emily, he doesn't love you. He only loves himself. That's why your mother left him. That's why she begged me to protect you. Emily's tears spilled over. She looked at Rick, the man who had bandaged her scraped knees, taught her to ride a bike, cheered for her at every recital. Then she looked at David, the stranger with her blood but none of her memories. And finally Harold, whose smirk had grown wider, as if chaos itself was his entertainment.
Suddenly, Harold clapped slowly, mockingly. Well, that's settled then. Emily sees David for what he is. But don't think you're the hero here, Rick, because you're not. Rick narrowed his eyes. What are you talking about? Harold leaned back, his grin sharp. You think I got close to Emily by accident? You think this marriage was just about love? No, Kensington. This was about power. David promised me half of Emily's inheritance if I helped him bring her into his fold. And it almost worked. Emily's stomach dropped. Harold, you knew? Harold shrugged. Of course. Why else do you think I rushed the engagement? The sooner you were tied to me, the sooner I'd have access to everything. But don't look so shocked, sweetheart. In this world, money is the only love that matters. Emily gasped, her heart shattering. The two men she had trusted most had both betrayed her. David slammed his hand on the table. "You snake! You were supposed to help me, not steal from me." Harold chuckled. "Oh, relax, David. I'm not stealing. I'm just playing the game better than you." The two men glared at each other like predators fighting over the same prey, and in that moment, Emily realized the awful truth. She had never been their family. She had only been their prize. Rick stepped between them, his voice steady, strong, unshaken. "Emily, look at me. You are not a pawn in their game. You're not a prize. You're not a bank account. You're my daughter. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. I will never, ever use you." Emily's lip trembled. His words cut through the chaos like light piercing darkness. For the first time all night, she felt something solid to hold on to. She threw her arms around Rick, sobbing into his chest. "I believe you, Dad. I believe you." Rick held her tight, tears stinging his own eyes. The restaurant erupted in whispers, diners pulling out their phones to record the spectacle. David and Harold, exposed, looked like cornered animals. "You'll regret this. You're throwing away millions." Harold sneered. "You think this is over? You don't know who you're dealing with." Rick turned, his voice iron. "No, you don't know who you're dealing with. This ends tonight." Later that week, David's schemes unraveled quickly. Rick handed Claire's letter to the family lawyer, along with evidence of David's fraud from years past. Harold's greed left a paper trail a mile long: emails, bank transfers, contracts. Within days, the truth was everywhere. David was indicted for fraud and coercion. Harold's reputation crumbled, his business partners abandoning him like rats fleeing a sinking ship. But Emily? She walked away free. Her inheritance remained untouched, safe in her name alone. And on Christmas morning, she sat by the fire with Rick, sipping cocoa, their living room glowing with the warmth of love, not money. "I'm sorry I doubted you," she whispered. Rick kissed the top of her head. "You don't ever have to be sorry, Emily. You're my daughter. Always have been, and always will be." Emily smiled, for the first time in weeks, her heart finally at peace.